Let's talk about the boy crisis. So, I want to talk about this op ed that I saw in the New York Times yesterday. And I also, a follower of mine sent me this Substack written by a woman where she was talking about the same sort of thing. So, I'm going to connect both threads. This was written by Robert Putnam and Richard Reeves, and I actually do recommend it. It was really, really good and really, really informative. It was very sociologically sound and it had a lot of data in it. Basically, the boy crisis, it's talking about this sort of crisis of masculinity. When we talk about the crisis, we're talking about this collection of things that are all sort of interrelated but inordinately affect men more, right? So, more men are dying of overdoses, more men are not working, more men are not going to college. And obviously, I think that whenever we have this conversation, people, in the initial response is like, who set that system up, which is very obvious. And trust me, I'm right there with you. One of the interesting things I found about this article is that when boys and men were disconnected 100 years ago in the 1900s, the president sort of enacted all of these organizations to help, right? So Big Brothers Big Sisters and all of these other sorts of clubs to make sure that men were participating in civic life, because we have found, and the research has found, that when men are not participating in anything, they become evil. Basically, they cause social unrest, they join gangs, they become incels, and that's what we're seeing now in 2025. So I think that the bigger overall crisis, obviously we can as feminists have the conversation that we are still talking too much about men, and we're still talking about masculinity and all of the problems that men are having in our society, where women are also very lonely, right? And we are seeing rates of loneliness with the dating apps and all of the American loneliness things that I've talked about in this playlist. The difference is that when women are lonely, they do not unalive people, and they do not sort of make it everyone else's problem, right? And again, this is, I don't know if this is a uniquely American problem, right? Where men have sort of been set up in the system where they feel deeply entitled to a lot of things, right? I made a video a couple of weeks ago on the chopped man epidemic where I was like, yeah, you didn't have to be hot for all of history. Now is the first time when women are finally allowed to have standards, and they're like, you're ugly, I don't want to marry you, and men are freaking out about it. But all of that aside, the issue is that when men are not in college and not working and dying and all of this other stuff, it slowly trickles down, right? When I was on Tumblr in 2012, I was telling people, as a social major, I was like, I don't think that the right way to go about this, right? Everyone was becoming woke, everyone was sort of awakening and understanding feminism and Judith Butler and performativity and all of this stuff, which is amazing. But we went in this direction. It's one thing to be hee hee ha ha, but I 15 years ago was I don't think that this is a good idea, you guys. I don't think that you can tell a population of people that they're disgusting pieces of shit for 20 years and have it turn out okay, right? With the rise of Andrew Tate and Trump and red pill content and all of these ideas, right, where men are sort of very openly saying we don't care about your rights, everyone who isn't us needs to be exterminated, I do think that there is a point where we say, okay, what can we do to interfere here and step in, right? And obviously this is very, very difficult to sort of parse through, and it's hard to talk about, right? I obviously am a man, I come from a working class background, I come from a single mother, and I beat the odds sociologically, demographically, right? I've talked on this account about demographic destinies, where people are like, well, if you come from a certain class, you're destined to be X, and if you come from a certain thing, you're destined to be Y. And it's well, no, right? That's just not true. Reshma Saujani is the creator of Girls Who Code. So she has spent her entire career focusing on women, focusing on the needs of women who enter tech. And she is saying that men are struggling and women should care, and sort of a plea to empathy, right? She is saying that we should try to be more empathetic to the situations of people who are suffering. And for right now, it happens to be men, but she's saying that we don't have to do it forever and not for always. And I do think that there is this weird tension where it's if we exhibit sympathy towards this group of people who has historically terrorized everyone, then it's okay, what are we doing here? But at the same time, like I said, when I was talking about Tumblr, I don't think that what we're doing now is the right answer. And it feels weird because it's you're placing the onus on the people who are the most affected, right? We as people of color, as queer people, as women, as immigrants, right? We all have to be okay, now let's cater to the needs of men. And that's not what anyone is saying at all. Both articles are very specific about we need to continue pouring resources into women and femininity and making sure that women are uplifted and working at the same exact rates as men. But again, the issue is coming down to the fact that when men are not working or participating in civic life or fulfilled, they become monsters. And that is the core issue. That's what people can't figure out, right? And that's sort of what we saw in Netflix's Adolescence, where it's how do we prevent people from falling into this pipeline of becoming actual radical incel everything. I'm gonna watch the comments on this one because I know that this is a really nuanced conversation, and it, again, I don't want it to sound like I'm just like, we have to think about the men, because I'm not that person at all. If you follow me, you know that I'm not that person. I just think that we should have more nuance when it comes to these conversations, only because the rates of criminality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are all rising because it is men who do these things. It is not women who like lose their minds when they are lonely.